off. The underdog, I go hard.
Hey guys, welcome back to Keith's Hot Takes. And on today's show, I got my guy Matthew Owens joining the show to help me preview the Final Four. Matthew, how you doing today?
I am good. It's a terrific weekend. Final Four weekend is always great. And this time of year is always great. We get the Final Four. Next week we get the Masters. We're closing up on the Indianapolis 500, which is my favorite event of the year. And I guess if you like the sun staying out longer, you're a fan. It messes me up, but nonetheless, I'm good. And thanks for having me.
Oh, yes, sir. But before we get into talking about the Final Four and all the madness that we've had during this tournament, uh, I wanted to address the shocking and breaking news that broke Monday morning with Lamar Jackson requesting a trade from the Ravens. Pretty much basically because they're like reportedly $100 million apart in contract talks. So what are your thoughts, with the Ravens not wanting to pay Lamar? I mean, he's won 45 out of 61 games. He's won an MVP. I mean, considering all the quarterbacks in the AFC, I don't know why they wouldn't want to pay Lamar. So, Matthew, what are your thoughts on this situation here?
It is interesting because there's no doubt that Lamar Jackson wins you regular season games. Uh, that's a fact. Does he win you playoff games?
Mm,
Up in the air. How many playoff games has he won? Is it one or two?
he won one. One.
Yeah, the one against Tennessee. I was trying to remember if there was another one. I guess not. I guess not. So that's the major question, as we know, is does he win you playoff games? The other part to this is Baltimore for years, basically since the Ravens became a franchise, became the Ravens franchise when they took over for the Cleveland Browns, the old Browns. We won't get into that. But ever since they became the Baltimore Ravens, they've done things a certain way. Their front office has said we're not going to overpay for players. You have to realize that this is an organization that won a Super Bowl with Trent Dilfer. It's an organization that won a Super Bowl with Joe Flacco. Now I know Joe Flacco is a a lot of people have very different feelings about what Joe Flacco was. Was he elite? No. Was he terrible? No. But he did win them a Super Bowl. Now Trent Dilfer is a totally different topic of conversation. But it is an organization that has won 2 Super Bowls without elite quarterbacks. And they definitely want to do things their way. And they do play hardball with some players, and they're doing it here. And what did you say the number was? Did you say 100 million?
Yeah, so I think Lamar was close to the Cleveland Browns gave Deshaun Watson all that guaranteed money, and he wants close to that, I'm reckoning. And the Ravens, I think they offered him 3 years, $133 million, and that wasn't enough for him.
They offered him what?
3 years, $133 million reportedly, and
And
he
he
did not.
turned it down?
Yes, he wants close to that Deshaun number.
What has Deshaun Watson done? Anyway, that's another different story, is Deshaun Watson and what he brings to the table. Maybe table was not the best use of words.
No.
Anyway, I can't imagine. So why did Lamar turn that down? I get he wants to be paid towards the top. Everybody wants to be viewed as one of, if not the best at their position, and they want to be paid like that. But I just look at what Tom Brady has done, and I know everything with me comes back to Tom Brady. I get it. But Tom Brady took how many pay cuts so his team could get better around him? Patrick Mahomes has just done that. They restructured Mahomes' contract to save them cap space. I look at players like that and think, that's why they're winning, right? They are the ultimate team player. I get wanting your money. I truly do. And more players will be going down this road of wanting their money after what happened with DeMar Hamlin, and they have every reason.
Oh
to do
yes.
that. They have every reason to. At the same time, as you and I sit here, and I won't speak for you, you can do that. But as I sit here, I won't tell you what's in my bank account, but it's not close to 6 digits, nonetheless 9. You want to turn down $133 million, that you have the freedom and the rights to do that, but Baltimore has every right to say, we're not going over that number, and if you don't want to play for that number, we can get someone else. That's how Baltimore's always done things.
Yeah. So unfortunately, uh, I just don't see this ending well for Lamar. Considering they're so far apart, money wise, $100 million, that's a lot. I can see if it was 15, we could work something out, but $100 million is a lot. And they signed him to a non-exclusive franchise tag, which means he can kind of talk to other teams, but they're going to have to give up some compensation to the team that wants to trade for Lamar. So I think that's why teams are kind of like, do we really want to give up 2 first-round picks? I mean, it's some teams that need a quarterback that I think shouldn't hesitate to give up 2 first-round picks to get a quarterback like Lamar. Um, like you said, me personally, I'm not in Lamar's shoes, but I don't know if I could turn down that amount of money because I've never been a millionaire or anything like that. But Lamar is different. Maybe if they had like approached him with this deal, 3 years, $133 million after he won the MVP, he may have done it. But I guess since he doesn't have any, years left, he feels like he's worth more. He's won the MVP. He sees that Deshaun got all that money, and what did Deshaun do in Houston to get all that money? So I can kind of see why Lamar feels that way. Um, and yeah, I just don't see this ending well at all. Where if he doesn't play for Baltimore this season, who are some teams you think should be blowing off the Ravens' phone?
Real quick, one thing about the Deshaun Watson thing is, and
Mm.
anytime a quarterback gets paid, becomes the highest paid quarterback, or that's any position. When a player becomes the highest paid player at his position, that changes the market, right? And that's what other players aim for. Well, what the Baltimore Ravens and what other teams can do going forward with their quarterbacks is, if a quarterback comes to them and says, I want to be paid that Deshaun Watson money, those organizations then turn around and say, we're not as stupid as the Cleveland Browns are. Because the Cleveland Browns, that's what they were. I'm sorry, the Cleveland
They
Browns
were.
were idiotic in giving Deshaun Watson all that money, all that guaranteed money, for one, the player that he is. I mean, he has plenty of talent, sure, but he has proven not much in the playoffs. He's won 1 playoff game in my memory, maybe 2.
I think
Um,
one. He beat
he
Buffalo.
hasn't.
That's the only one I can think of.
Yeah, he certainly hasn't won more than 2 at the very least. Then they gave it to him, even though he had been off for all that time, and we know why he didn't play, and his legal issues. So organizations, that kind of reset the market for the organizations, didn't it? They can say now, we're not as stupid as the Cleveland Browns. We're not as
Yes.
vulnerable. We're not as desperate as the Cleveland Browns, and they can go from there. Now, as far as where he plays, who knows? I could very well see Indianapolis making a move, because Indianapolis has been, the revolving door at quarterback the last handful of
Ooh,
years.
yes.
But if you look, there are a lot of teams. The NFL is a have or have not league, with the have being quarterbacks. You have to have anywhere from really good to elite quarterback to contend. There's no wiggle room in that.
At all.
And I think everyone looks at Lamar, at the very least, and everybody has a difference of opinion on him, but at the very least, I think everyone looks at him as a really good quarterback. Maybe you do look at him as an elite quarterback, but he's somewhere in the middle there. Indianapolis. I was going to say Las Vegas. They just got Jimmy Garoppolo, didn't they?
Yes.
Carolina, Washington, Tampa Bay, New Orleans. I just named the whole NFC South.
Well,
There's a
New
lot
Orleans
of
just got Derek Carr, so that they
Oh,
probably
that's
also.
right. That's right. Thank you. So there's a lot of teams that need a quarterback, but like you said, who's going to give up that much for Lamar?
Yeah, that's the biggest question. I was thinking maybe Washington. I know they look like they're going to invest in Sam Howell. That's my guy, but he's no Lamar Jackson. What Lamar can do, he's so dynamic with his legs, and I just think he needs some weapons around him. He had Hollywood Brown, but and Mark Andrews, but after that, who else really? So I really would like to see him somewhere else and see him, with a talented receiving core. And I think that could be scary. So we have to see where Lamar lands. But like you said, that's why I'm so surprised the Ravens aren't trying to figure something out with Lamar, because they're in the AFC, and like you said, if you don't have a quarterback, you're going to be pretty awful.
I think what's an interesting conversation though about Baltimore is the Tyler Huntley of it all. The Ravens have totally reconstructed their style of play to fit Lamar Jackson, right?
Mhm.
If they want to go with Tyler Huntley, they would not have to change their offense that much.
At all.
They really wouldn't. And Tyler Huntley has won them some games. Tyler Huntley has kept them he kept them in the playoff game against Cincinnati. As I just hit my desk here. I'm sorry. I just moved my camera. So I mean, if they want to go with Huntley, they wouldn't have to change a lot. But you can obviously ask the question: is Tyler Huntley? How much alike is Tyler Huntley and Lamar Jackson on the talent scale? That's a fair question. We don't know.
Yeah, so we shall see. I mean, to wrap up on this topic, you could really see the drop off once Tyler Huntley took over the offense. It wasn't as dynamic. They've really played in some ugly, low scoring games. So that's something that they have to think about. Is that something that they want to move forward with? So we just have to wait and see. Now to talk about the madness that is March Madness. Um, Matthew, are you surprised at how crazy this tournament has been? Because I remember the night before it started, I said in our group chat, I think this tournament is going to be madness. Now, I wasn't expecting it to be this crazy, but are you surprised? Like we have Fairleigh Dickinson upsetting Purdue in round one. I was not expecting that. Uh, we have no number one seeds making it to the Final Four. That's just crazy. Um, Kansas lost to Arkansas in the round of 32. Like I said, Purdue, they lost first game. Houston and Alabama lost in the Sweet 16. So what are your thoughts on all this madness that we've had so far?
Listen, no one's going to come into a tournament and say, yeah, I expect a 15 and a 16 to win. That had never happened before. A 15 nor a 16, a 15 and a 16 had not won in the same tournament. Of course, only the second time ever that a 16 had beaten a 1. So no one expected that level of craziness. But if you watch college basketball this season, and I know that's a dying art because a lot of people are suddenly now just tuning into college basketball late February, early March. But if you watch college basketball since the start of the season, you knew that this was as wide open as it's ever been and that anything at all could happen in this tournament. So no, I'm not surprised that all hell broke loose the way it has. But clearly, Fairleigh Dickinson beating Purdue, no one could have seen that coming. Princeton beating Arizona, I don't know if I don't want to sit here and look and say, yeah, I picked Princeton to beat Arizona because I didn't. I have my bracket right here in front of me. But Princeton is a team, and really all Ivy League teams that make it to the tournament are like this. Ivy League teams can give power teams problems because they haven't seen a team play like them all season long. But yeah, you could see this coming really from the start. We did not have a dominant team this season. We had it was really all year long. It was Alabama, Houston, Purdue, and everybody else. You could see something going on with Purdue because that's their annual tradition. of choking away something in March. We just didn't expect it to be in a 116 game.
Nope.
I never really felt Kansas was a big threat for this national championship this year. I didn't think they had a lockdown defense. They were one of the best defensive teams in the country, but I never felt like they had enough offense after Jalen Wilson. So I was not surprised to see them lose to Arkansas, especially because Arkansas was a team throughout the year that had a lot of talent, just did not play up to their potential. Alabama was my pick to win it all. There were issues with that team
Yes.
off the court that
Mm.
I'm not going to talk about because I don't want to get that fired up. But clearly, as it revolved around their best player, Brandon Miller, clearly something was wrong with Brandon Miller in this tournament. Whether you want to say it was that groin injury that he suffered, or if you want to say it was just the pressure of everything else going on in his life, he did not play well in this tournament. And Houston, I was up and down with Houston all year. At one point, I was convinced they were going to run through this tournament and win every game by double digits. Then they had some injury issues, and I thought they could lose to Auburn and Birmingham because that's basically a quasi road game that they played. I was very impressed that they won that game, and then they run into a buzzsaw in Miami. But no, back to your original question, I'm not shocked one bit that this is the kind of tournament we got, because it's as wide open as ever. And I think this is going to be the status quo moving forward with what is going on with NIL, with the transfer portal, with the extra year of eligibility after COVID. These teams are getting older quicker and staying older longer. And I think this is the kind of tournament that we're going to see going forward. We're going to see 14s and 15s and 16s win more often. Just think, it's the second straight year we had a 15. It was the third straight year we had a 15 go to the Sweet 16. Oral Roberts in 21, St. Peter's last year, Fairleigh Dickinson this year. I truly believe this is going to be the status quo going forward. And I really think, Keith, in the next 10 years, 10, 12, 15 years, we're going to have a double-digit seed win this tournament, which has never happened before. But I think it's going to happen because if you just look at this year's bracket, and I'm looking at it now, the quality of teams that were a double-digit seed. I mean, Penn State was a double-digit seed. They went to the final of the Big Ten tournament. USC was a double-digit seed. NC State, who had one of the best backcourts in the entire country. Pittsburgh, who didn't deserve to be down there anyway. We might talk about the ACC later. Then I'll really go off. Providence was an 11. Oral Roberts was a 12. They had won 30 games going into this tournament. The quality of teams that are double-digit seeds are going to result in a double-digit seed winning this tournament here sometime soon. I really believe that.
Yes, indeed. And like you said, with the NIL and the transfer portal, I think that's really changed the landscape of college basketball. And I think that's what makes March Madness different from the college football playoffs. You know, we're not going to get the same four teams in the final every year, and you never know who's going to, win these games. And I think that's what makes it so exciting. So I really have enjoyed all the chaos. And like you said, Princeton, I should have picked them because their style of play, like you said, Arizona hadn't seen that all year, so it was really hard for them to know what they were getting themselves into, with all the back cuts and the way Princeton runs their offense. So that didn't surprise me at all. Florida Atlantic, I mean, who would have saw this coming? But they have won 35 games, so that lets you know they're legit. They're not, no Cinderella team. So I just really enjoyed this, and we have three, first time Final Four teams making their first Final Four appearance. The first time since 1970 when we had Brown, Mexico State, and but it was Jacksonville, right? I think that was the other team. Yeah, so it's kind of a tournament like that when we had Brown, Jacksonville, and New Mexico State in it with UCLA. So I just love that, and I can't believe it's been that long since we had three teams making their first appearance in the Final Four. So it's just been crazy. Why don't we talk about one of my probably favorite things about this tournament so far? uh, Markquis Nowell. This how exciting was he to watch to you, bro? And I don't think nobody saw this Kansas State team coming because I think they were picked towards the bottom of the Big 12. So this is just shocking the run that they went on.
Yeah, and this was a team that not really many people knew about coming into the season until they won a game at home against Kansas. That really put them on the map. But Markquis Nowell is special. He's the
Yes,
best pure point guard that we had in this tournament, and I don't think there's any doubt or discussion about that. And to think what he and Keontae Johnson did all season long. They were one of the best duos in college basketball. You also add in guys like David Gasson, who transferred in from Virginia Tech, and some other pieces that Kansas State had. This was a really good team, but Markquis Nowell shined in this tournament against Kentucky, against Michigan State in the Garden. He was terrific. Kansas State had a great season under a first-year head coach, and they have a very bright future ahead of them. And a changing landscape in the Big 12 as well. Texas and Oklahoma will be leaving soon. And next year,
yes.
they add Cincinnati, they add UCF, Houston, and BYU. I think I got them all. I can't keep up with conference realignment these days.
Me either.
But a changing landscape in the Big 12, and you would expect that next year and moving forward, Kansas State would be at the top of that conference.
And like you said, Marquise Nowell, he even broke the assist record for the NCAA tournament in that Michigan State game with 19 assists. And I was just like, wow, that was just crazy. Some of the passes and lobs he was throwing to his teammates, they were just so fun to watch. I really hated to see their run in because I was thinking the way the tournament was going, they was going to win the whole thing. But Jerome Tang in Kansas State, they have a bright future. I can't wait to see how he builds on this in year two. It's gonna be hard to replace Markquis Nowell. And I think Keontae Johnson, he's a senior too, right? Can he come back or?
Yes. I believe that's the end of his eligibility, but that's another thing I can't keep up with either. With
Yeah.
the extra COVID year and the transfer portal, I can't keep, but I believe that was his final year.
Okay, so the way that Kansas State went on this run, I mean, Jerome Tang is probably gonna have some guys that want to come play for him. So, uh, but I
Absolutely.
but I just enjoyed, his dancing with the team and how tight they were, and I enjoyed him going in Florida Atlantic's locker room and told them that they
Yeah.
were really the toughest team that they had played all year, and that they can go win it the whole thing if they stay together. So that was just beautiful to see. So let's preview our final four matchups. Like I said earlier, this is the first time ever since 1970 that we've had excuse me, this is the first time ever that a top three seed did not reach the man's final four. And like I said earlier, this is the first time since 1970 that we have three teams making their first final four appearance. So let's talk about our first game, Matthew. We have the number 9 seed, Florida Atlantic. They won the East region, going up against the number 5 seed, San Diego State. This is going to be a clash. San Diego State, they're known for their defense, playing ugly, slow-paced games. They're like a Virginia. They're like a mid-major Virginia. Would you say that how they play? That kind of how they play. So how do you see our first matchup playing out?
Yeah, San Diego State plays defense a lot like Virginia. The difference is that they do have better offensive threats and a better offensive system. Darion Trammell, a big part of that. Uh, he was terrific against Creighton. You have Micah Parrish was brilliant against Charleston and Furman on the first weekend of the tournament. Keyshawn Johnson. They've got a lot of really good offensive pieces on this San Diego State team. And Brian Dutcher, you can't help but to feel so good for him as the head coach of this team. I think that the story about San Diego State that not a lot of people maybe remember because so much has happened in the world since then, but remember they were heading towards a season like this in 2020. They had
Mm-hmm.
only lost like 2 games. They were going to be a
Yes.
1 or a 2 seed in the tournament. They were going to be a Final Four threat in that tournament. Tournament, of course, got canceled
Mm.
with COVID and all of that. Now here they come back 3 years later, and here they are in the Final Four. It's amazing the way it's broken for them. They played a great game against Charleston first round. Listen, Charleston was a team that could light up anyone. They shut them down. They shut down Furman, a team that put up 80-plus points a game. I know everyone's going to say they played CAA team and a SoCon team. Enough of that.
Yes.
And then, and if you weren't sold by then they beat Alabama, who I thought was the best team going into this tournament. And again, they made it a rock fight. The styles make fights, right? And if there was a team Alabama was going to lose to in this tournament, it was probably going to be San Diego State. And they made it a rock fight, and they played it to a T. Did the same thing against Creighton, who can really score. So this is a really good feel-good story for San Diego State doing this after not only what they did 3 years ago. Remember, this has been a program that's been knocking on the door of doing this for a long time. You think of 2011 with Kawhi Leonard on that team. That was a terrific San Diego State team. So this has been a program knocking on the door of this kind of moment for a while, and I feel good for them. Then on the other side, you mentioned it with FAU. They've won 35 games.
Oof.
It was a travesty that they were a 9 seed.
Yes.
We were talking about the quality of double-digit seeds and teams that are considered Cinderellas. This is not a Cinderella. I don't want to pop everyone's bubble on this amazing Cinderella run, but that's not what this is. They are now 35-3. They were undervalued by the committee, like many mid-majors are, because the committee, no matter what they say, they do not watch all the games. They do not watch all the teams. And you could have just watched 1, 2, 3 games from Florida Atlantic this season and realized this was not a 9 seed. And they've shown everybody. And again, I know people can say, oh, they all had to play a 16 seed in the second round. Who cares? They had to beat Tennessee. They had to beat Kansas State. This is not a Cinderella team. It's surely not a team that should have been seeded 9. And this is a team that could very well win the national championship. And this is not a very big team either. They're not huge. They do have a 7-footer in Vladislav Golden. Other than him, they're not a very big team, but gosh, they can rebound because they're scrappy and they're tough. And this is going to be a difficult game with them in San Diego State. I can't imagine it being played higher than the 60s.
So who do you have winning this game?
I think I've got San Diego State by a whisker, just because I think in crunch time, in a low-scoring game, like I just said, I think it'll be played in the 50s. And late in the game, I think they have just enough offense, a little bit more offense than Florida Atlantic does to get to the finish line.
Okay. Well, like you said, the big difference between San Diego State and Virginia is San Diego State actually has a very potent offense, and they're very scrappy on defense. They have a nice rim protector. What were we before I get into my take on this game? What were your thoughts on the way that Creighton game ended? Were you okay with the ending of that game?
No, and no way was I all right with that. And I've heard the conversation. Yes, it's a foul, but should it be called there? I'm of the belief that it should not be called there, especially the way the game was officiated for the first 39 minutes and change. They were letting a lot of contact go. The officials did a great job knowing that it was 2 physical teams that would make a lot of contact, and the officials did a really good job officiating it that way. And then all of a sudden in the final seconds, they decided to go against that. That was first. Secondly, the way they handled the last inbounds play from Creighton. They can say that the clock didn't start on time. Baloney. Don't give me that, because when you've got however many million people watching, and on the bottom right of your screen here, you have a clock that says, that clearly shows that when the ball touched out of bounds at 0.2 or 0.3, there is clearly time left by that. Now, if that clock's not right, I want the officials to tell us that. Not in this official, post-game press release. I think officials get away way too easily. In football, they have to come right out on that microphone and tell everybody, the crowd and the TV audience, they have to tell everybody what they're seeing and what the call is. They should have to do the same thing in every other sport, because they were just able to go over to their monitor and they'll do look like this and doing nothing, looking at a monitor for 10 minutes, and then all of a sudden they do this. It's like, well, give us an explanation. Don't just walk off without an explanation. No, I was not okay with the way that game ended at all. Sorry, I went on that rant you asked.
Oh yes, you're good. Because I was like, how did y'all determine this with a stopwatch? I heard them say, I'm like, what? And that's just
It's ridiculous. And one of the officials in that game was an official at the Duke at Virginia game,
oh
where they
Lord.
called that foul and said that it didn't occur with time on the clock when it was clear that it did. So I'm
Oh
thinking
Lord.
Lee Cassell needs to learn a little bit about a clock.
Yeah, because that was just horrible. That caused Duke the #1 seed in the ACC tournament. Who knows what could have happened there? Because if they beat Carolina when they did the final game in the regular season, they would have been the #1 seed, and that could have changed a whole lot. But yeah, I agree with you. I just hated it ended that way. San Diego State, they did advance, and they're going to Houston, so it is what it is. Um, One thing that I noticed with Florida Atlantic in their game with Kansas State was their shooting. Like they weren't just depending on one guy. I think that kind of hurt Kansas State because Johnson got in foul trouble, so it was Nowell or bust really. And Florida Atlantic, they were killing them with a Golden inside, and then their shooters were just lighting it up. So I think they're gonna have to make shots like that against San Diego State, because it's gonna be a low scoring game, and teams don't really shoot well in these football stadiums because
Yeah.
it changes the court and everything. So like you said, I think this is gonna be a low scoring game. San Diego State's probably going to keep it in the 50s. I would be shocked if it got out of the 50s. Um, and I wanted Florida Atlantic to win. I feel like that'd be a good story. But like you said, I just think it's gonna be coming down to a late in the ball game. It's gonna be a close possession game. And I would kind of trust San Diego State more in a close game than I would Florida Atlantic. I think it could be like that Florida Atlantic Tennessee game because they've seen a tough defensive team in Tennessee, and
Yeah.
Tennessee is kind of they didn't have the offense to back up their defense. That kind of hurt them. So I think Florida Atlantic has kind of seen this already, so that's going to help them. But as much as I want to see them in the national championship game, I think it's going to be San Diego State. So let's preview our other game. I think this is going to be a classic. We have number 5 Miami playing the number 4 seed UConn, who has just plowed through their competition like a northeastern snowplow, blowing out all of their opponents by 20 plus points. The demolition job that they did on Gonzaga in Vegas was just mind-boggling. I was not expecting them to do that to Gonzaga like that. How do you see our second semifinal playing out?
Well, UConn's the only one here that's ever been to a Final Four. They've won 4 national championships, a chance to get to a 5th, which would be madness to think about because their first didn't come until 1999.
Yeah,
So
it's
they would
crazy.
have won 5 in 24 years if they do win this. This is a UConn team that I would say they've gone through peaks and valleys, but really it's been 2 peaks and 1 valley, right? Because at the start of the season, they were undefeated for a long time, and we thought this is the best team in the country. It's at least one of
Hmm.
the best. And then all of a sudden, they went on a long losing streak, on a long losing spell, and we thought, what has happened to UConn? And then they turned it around, and here they are again. This is a very interesting Connecticut team because they can come at you in a lot of different angles. But I'll tell you one thing that I've noticed with UConn in this tournament, they're a heck of a second half team.
Yes. Ooh,
They've
geez.
had some close games in the first half against Iona and against St. Mary's, not against Arkansas. They blew them out
No.
before to go. But they've had some really close games at halftime early in the second half, and then they just take off in the second half. So you have to say, one, halftime adjustments by Dan Hurley. You say 2, they've got good depth. They're not getting worn down, and they're playing smart because they're not getting in foul trouble. That's how you become a good second half team. Adama Sonogo is a terrific talent. And Naheem Aline, now let me tell you something. Naheem Aline only averages about 18, 19 minutes a game off the bench, but that is a real spark coming off the bench. Back to that depth that I was talking about. He used to play at Virginia Tech. Again, this is a deep team, and he helps in that. And, at one point we were talking about UConn. Do they have a true point guard? Tristan Newton has become a terrific assist man for this team. So UConn is going to go into this game as the favorite. They're going into the Final Four as the favorite to win the championship, and for good reason. But Indiana, Houston, and Texas will tell you, do not overlook Miami.
Nope.
Because, and at the start of the tournament, everybody was saying, well, the 12-5 to pick is Drake over Miami. Everybody was saying Drake's going to beat Miami. Well, that didn't happen. Again, Miami was undervalued, just like every other ACC team in this tournament was undervalued. I don't know what kind of epidemic is going on with the ACC and how they are perceived. And that's going to be talked about a lot in this offseason in the ACC offices. I promise you it's already getting talked about. But the ACC, once again, continues to prove you can disrespect them, you can perceive them mistakenly. But here we are once again, the ACC as a team in the Final Four. And this Miami team is legit. This is not the Miami teams of 10, 12 years ago under Jim Larinaga that would smother you with defense and win a game in the 60s and 50s. They still have a good defense, but they put up 80 a game. They put up 89 on Houston, who only gave up 55 a game.
Woo.
The guards are amazing. Isaiah Wong, the ACC Player of the Year, he can beat you in so many ways. Nigel Pack, he lit up Houston. He lit up. He hit 7 threes in that game. And Jordan Miller, I can't even fathom this, Keith. Jordan Miller did not receive a single vote for ACC Player of the Year, even though he averages 15 points and 7 rebounds a game.
Shaking my head.
Are the people in the ACC even watching ACC basketball?
No.
So Miami's legit. I actually think Miami's going to win this game. I really do. Norchad Omier averages a double-double. I don't know how he doesn't get talked about. Again, the undervaluing of Miami and the ACC, but Norchad Omier does not get talked about. He averages a double-double a game. He will be huge in a matchup with Sonogo and on the inside, and they can shoot it from anywhere. Wooga Poplar. It's a heck of a name. Remember that name, Wooga Poplar. He's got some Philly toughness in him, and he can really provide a spark off the bench or in the starting lineup. Now one thing that UConn will have the undisputed edge in is depth. Miami is not deep. They'll play 8 guys.
If that.
So they're going to have to. They cannot get in foul trouble. And they would like to speed up the tempo, but they can't go 100 miles an hour because they can't get worn out. But I think Miami's going to win this game because I think Jim Larinaga is going to have another great coaching performance. And I think between Wong and Pack and Miller and all the other guys that I mentioned, Omier and Poplar and so on, I think they're going to win this game, even though UConn's going to go in as not only the favorite to win the game, but also the championship.
No Chad Omier, excuse me. Even though he's undersized, he is very strong.
Yeah.
That's something I learned when he played against North Carolina, how strong he is, because he's only 6'7", but he is swole. So I'm looking forward to him and Sonogo going at it. Miami doesn't really have a lot of size. They play 4 elite guards around 1 big. And so, like you said, their guards can fill it up. Wong and Miller, they're the reason why I'm going to pick Miami to upset UConn. I'm tired of the ACC getting disrespected. I know UConn is going to be heavy favorites. They should be with the way they've ran through their competition. But This Miami team is special. They were down 13 to Texas. I was about to cut the game off. I'm glad I did. The way they roared back on Texas, Wong and Miller, they're just special, man. So I really think this is going to be a high scoring, up and down game, and I'm really looking forward to this Final Four. I know some people not be as excited as me and you because it's not Duke, North Carolina, Kansas, Villanova like last year. But I don't care who it is. It's college basketball, and I can't wait to watch Saturday. And I think we'll have Miami and San Diego State in our national championship. And I think Miami's going to win the whole thing and get some respect for our ACC conference.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've got the same results. I have Miami and San Diego State in the title game on Monday, and I've got Miami winning it. Listen, I am an ACC homer.
Yes.
I don't mind admitting that because I am, but I'm also, I feel at least, a very realistic person. And you can say that the ACC has had some down years if you want to, but it depends on how you look at it. A lot of people look at the bottom of each conference to gauge what kind of a conference they are. And when you look at the bottom of, say, a Big Ten or a Big East, of course, the bottom of the Big 12, the Big East is going to be better than the bottom of the ACC because the Big 12 has 10 teams, at least for now. The Big East has, 10 teams, I think it is. The bottom's always going to be better. The records are going to look better because of the less teams. You look at the ACC this year, Louisville was terrible. There's a lot of extenuating circumstances around Louisville, who only won 4 games. Georgia Tech going through another coaching change there. Florida State had a very un-Florida State kind of season. Boston College to whoever will take them. God bless everybody in the Boston College area and that university, but they bring nothing to the conference outside of women's lacrosse, and that's it. But everyone looks at the ACC under this enormous microscope, and they said, well, Duke was just a 5 seed. They were not playing like a 5 seed down the stretch. How Pittsburgh was in the first 4 boggles my mind. How they were considered a bubble team boggles my. Pittsburgh was good all year long. And I swear it has a lot to do. I've said this for a long time. It has a lot to do with preseason rankings and just the preseason perception. No one anticipated Pittsburgh being good this year. Well, that's fine. Neither did I. Neither did you. Neither did anyone. No one expected Pittsburgh to be good. But then when they started winning games and looking good, your perception in your mind says, well, they're not going to be good. This is a fluke. No, it's not a fluke. Pittsburgh was good. Ask Mississippi State that, especially ask Iowa State that. Those great conferences, the Big 12 and the SEC, well, Pittsburgh beat them both. Those great conferences, the Big 12 and the SEC, they got the most in. The Big 10, where are they? Where are they right now? None in the Final Four. Very little. The elite. Don't even start with the Big 10. They're a joke every single year. The Big 10 can't do anything. They haven't won a title in 23 years. Their best threat every year seems to be Michigan State, who comes in as a 7, 8, or 9 seed every year, and that's your biggest threat. Don't get me started. The ACC is a terrific conference. Pittsburgh should not have been on the bubble. Clemson should have been in. I know the metrics, the wonderful metrics, and the net, which nobody can make heads or tails of. The net said Clemson wasn't good. Oh, bull hockey. Clemson, all you have to do is watch Clemson play. They were a good team. And North Carolina, they lost to Alabama way forever a long time ago in November. They lost to Alabama in 4 overtimes. If they had just won that game in one of those overtimes, North Carolina would have been in. So that would have put in 5 teams plus North Carolina to make 6, and what I think Clemson should have been in to make 7. And then all of a sudden, everybody's not saying the ACC is a mid-major, like everyone seems to be saying. But boy, they are. Miami in the Final Four. God bless them.
Really quickly, the ACC is the only conference to have a team in the men's Final Four and the women's Final Four. So Hey, that's not bad for a conference that they talk about like it's so god awful.
Yeah,
Not.
since 2015, which was the first year Louisville was there. Louisville came in 2014, which made the 14-15 basketball season their first year. Since 2015, the ACC leads the country in Sweet 16 appearances, Elite 8 appearances, Final Four, and national championships.
Look at that. You would think we saw
Shocker, isn't it? It's a
shocker.
shocking,
Uh,
shocking bit of information.
and to give my predictions for the women's Final Four, which I'm also excited about
Woo!
Friday, that's gonna be amazing. We got Virginia Tech going up against LSU, and then we got Iowa, excuse me, and South Carolina. So I'm looking forward to both of those matchups Friday. Um, I don't like it how their championship game is going to be at 3:30 on Sunday. That just rubs me the wrong
Well,
way. I think it
They
should
they
be.
did they did that to get it on national television on ABC. They want it on ABC to bring in more numbers. Either you do it at 3:30 on ABC or you do it at 7 or 8 o'clock on ESPN. They wanted it on ABC. You can't put it on ABC on a Sunday night, so they put it on a Sunday afternoon.
That is just awful. They deserve better. I'd rather be on ESPN at 8 o'clock, 7 o'clock, not no 3:30. What are we doing? But anywho, I got South Carolina and LSU in my national championship game, and I think that's going to be a classic. So
Yeah, I can't wait for South Carolina and Iowa. You get Caitlin Clark against that Dawn Staley South Carolina defense. I think South Carolina will win because of that defense. I like LSU as well, like you do, to beat Virginia Tech, although I'd love to see Virginia Tech win. What a great season for Virginia Tech,
yes,
by the
what a
way. You know, the men's basketball team won their first ever ACC title in 22. Now, this year, the women win their first ever ACC title, turning into a basketball powerhouse, Virginia Tech. And Miami, too. I mean, Miami's got a Final Four team on the men's side, and they made it to the Elite Eight on the women's side.
yeah. That was,
ACC was brilliant this year in women's basketball. Louisville, Duke, North Carolina. Oh, my gosh, they were so good. Anyway, South Carolina to beat Iowa, LSU to beat Virginia Tech, and we get the Gamecocks and the Tigers again. They played on Super Bowl Sunday, by the way, and
it
they were
was not
both
pretty.
undefeated, and South Carolina ran away from LSU.
Whew.
I think it will be much closer than that, but I do have South Carolina winning it. And I got to say, I think South Carolina is going to win the national championship again, finish undefeated. If you're the University of South Carolina, why aren't you looking at Don Staley and say, hey, you want to coach our men's team?
Hey, why not?
I mean, the men's team did make a Final Four, 5 years ago, 6 years ago now, but ever since they haven't done
Whew.
anything. I don't know why you wouldn't at least ask the question. Just ask the question.
It don't hurt. I mean, it doesn't. I don't know. That probably be a lot on her plate, but she can do it. She's the goat. So I agree with you. I think that senior class they're gonna want to finish undefeated. I think it's gonna be a lot closer this time around against LSU. I don't want to blow out again because
Yeah,
I was looking forward to that on Super Bowl Sunday, like you said, and uh, for it to end the way it did was very disappointing. But Virginia Tech, like you said, what a story. Kitley, I'm looking forward to her going against Angel
oh
Reese
man. Oh my goodness.
and Caitlin Clark. She is so
Yeah.
fun to watch. I know Don Staley is going to send the kitchen sink and then some at her. But that's going to be so entertaining to watch. So both Final Fours this weekend. I just can't wait. Basketball all weekend. Sports fans' dream.
And both in Texas.
Yeah, that's amazing. So we got the women's in Dallas, and then the men's will be in Houston. I think the women, I think they don't play in a football stadium like the men's do. They play in a
No.
normal arena, which I
Yeah.
think the men should too. But they try to get as many fans as they
They
can
want
at
they
the
want
same.
80,000 people there.
Yes, which
And
is
then
one.
and then person number 79,623 sitting way up here. They need binoculars to see the game.
Yeah, there's no point if you're sitting that high because you can't see nothing. You're just there
I
for the.
just I'll just be at my house in my air conditioned house with a refrigerator and a bathroom. I think I'll just watch it from there.
Yeah, because I would never want to be that high and watching it. But Matthew, thank you again for taking time out of your busy schedule to help me preview the Final Four. I know you're gonna kill it on the radio this weekend, calling the games. So good luck, my brother, and appreciate you for joining the show.
Thank you. Anytime, love it. When are we going to talk some NASCAR on here, huh?
I would have to start watching NASCAR to talk.
Or hockey or tennis. Come on, let's do it.
I've only played hockey on the video game. I haven't. I can't tell you the last time I watched a hockey game. That would be. I would have to start watching those sports to talk about it.
All right. Well, thank you again. Anytime.
Yes, sir, my brother.